everybody, and welcome to Simply Scuba, and welcome to the Saturday Surface Interval in association with extreme sports magazine Mpora. But more about them later. So, as the old adage goes, the Earth's surface is approximately 7/10 water. We are just a big blue planet, and there's a lot of water on it. This is good for scuba divers. We go scuba diving in water, and it's arguably more important than any of the dive equipment that we need for a dive. You simply need water to go scuba diving. And whilst there is plenty of amazing things to see in our seas and oceans, we also have plenty of large bodies of waters inside our very own countries called lakes. Now, they sometimes have different names depending on where you are and how big they are, but we're just going to call them lakes for now. So, I learnt to dive in a lake, and I qualified a lot of new divers in lakes. They have quite a few benefits over just the open ocean for both students and dive instructors, but it's also worth heading to a diving lake every now and then, even when you're qualified. So don't cross them off your list. Personally, I try and head to a diving lake fairly early in the season to do a check dive, make sure that all of my gear is good after a service, and if the weather is rough in the middle of the season, I don't think I've ever called off a lake dive due to rough weather, so you can always head to the lake. But there are plenty of reasons to go diving in a lake, so let's talk about why you need to lake dive. One of the best things about diving inland lakes is that they are usually filled with fresh water. There's no pesky salt, just good old-fashioned fresh water. Without salt, you don't need to wash your gear quite as thoroughly. You still need to wash your gear, don't get me wrong, but you don't need to worry about salt building up inside your gear. In the ocean, the salt is dissolved in the water, and during a dive, it's working its way into your gear and the fabric, and it takes a real good wash down after the dive to physically get all of that salt out. Fresh water also means that you don't need to carry as much lead to physically get down, because of the salt in ocean water, you're much more buoyant in salt water compared to fresh. So in fresh water, you don't need as much lead on your weight belt or in your weight pockets to actually get down. And we all know how much it sucks to carry around and put on your weight belt or pouches. So if you can get away with carrying less lead on a dive, it's a lot better, isn't it? The ocean is an ever-changing environment. You have currents and tides that are always changing direction, and the water temperature fluctuates a lot during the day. Lakes don't really have tides. I mean, technically they will, but nowhere near like they do in the ocean. Without tides, you won't have to worry about just random currents in certain areas and water movement to worry about, which makes lakes a very safe and stable place to dive. Dive lakes also have medical equipment and training to hand, so you're going to have people all around you in case anybody gets into trouble. And they'll often actually have fast boats in the lakes to actually get divers in distress on the surface as quickly as possible. So they are a very safe place to dive. That's what makes lakes a great place to test out new equipment and setups, because you don't need to worry about changing tides or currents or if something goes wrong. It's a relatively sterile environment so that you can focus all of your attention on your new piece of gear or your weighting, your trim. You can practice skills in the water, all in a safe environment that you can't really get lost in. If you get turned around in a lake, the worst place you can possibly end up is the far side of the lake. If you go too far in the ocean, far enough in the wrong direction, you might end up in, I don't know, France. To be fair, there are worse places that you can end up. It's just France was the first one that came to mind. Not saying that France is a bad place, just France. Today's Saturday Surface Interval is produced in association with the extreme sports magazine Mpora. So Mpora is an online magazine that is all about inspiring adventure. So whether your adventure takes you sliding around on a snowy mountain, pulling yourself up on a rock climbing wall, riding your bike through wooded trails, or surfing barrels down at the beach, and yes, of course, exploring the underwater world on Scuba, Mpora is a website that has got you covered. So Mpora features all sorts of interviews of industry-leading professionals and brands as well, previews of upcoming events, reviews of the latest equipment, and the latest news, just everything that you need to keep yourself clued up on the big outdoor issues. Mpora has got the lot. So there's going to be a link down in the description below. Click on that at the end of this video. Diving lakes are usually there for a reason, and the owners of the lakes, they try and do their best to make their diving lake as inviting and interesting as possible to, get more people to come to them. Instead of natural shipwrecks and reef, you'll often find purposely sunk wrecks of boats, planes, cars, buses, submarines, all sorts of stuff that you can explore underwater. But more importantly, they're purposefully sunk. So if it's a plane or a double-decker bus, they've had all of their electronics and wiring stripped out because you can get snagged on those. You don't want any of that. So they take all of that out beforehand. Anything dangerous to the local environment, that's been siphoned out. They kind of move all that out. Penetration points like doors and hatches, they're either locked in an open position so they will never shut. They're either like welded open so they're actually wider, so to give you a bit more space to get in and out, or they're simply welded shut so there's no way that you can sort of get into the wreck because it might be dangerous. So the wrecks down there, they're much more safer. I've even been in planes where they've had all the chairs and seats and everything kind of gutted out, so you can still swim through the fuselage without worrying about getting caught or trying to get through a confined space. They're purposefully sunk for scuba divers so that we can get in and out with all of our gear. Diving lakes will have a high concentration of wrecks to explore, so you can see plenty of stuff all on one single dive, and they'll often be marked in some way as well on the surface. So that way you will definitely find them. There's no way if you can miss a wreck if you simply follow the rope down from the buoy to the actual wreck that piece of rope is tied onto. It's pretty hard to miss it. Dive lakes can also be interesting if they are artificial. A lot of diving lakes had a previous life as quarries before they were scuba diving lakes. You basically just fill it with water and the water sticks around, but they still maintain their geography. So you'll have flat plateaus and then roads down to deeper sections. I mean, I've been in lakes that have had sunken forests that you can explore. Just because it's a big puddle of water out in the countryside doesn't mean there's something not interesting to see under there. So yeah, they are definitely worth checking out. Diving lakes usually have a building nearby filled with professional divers, new and rental dive equipment, a compressor, and if you're really lucky, a burger grill as well. So if you're diving out at sea, you have your boat and whatever you bring with you. That's about it. If you forget something or something breaks, that's it. You can't go diving. You just need to head back and get a replacement something. At an inland lake, you can get a replacement, whatever it is, and you can get a fresh air fill then and there between your dives when you're doing your surface interval. So if you only have one tank, you can dive more than once a day. You just, as long as you can keep getting your tanks filled, go for it. On a small boat, if you only have one tank, you only have one dive. So it's actually better at an inland lake because you can get those continuous air fills. In the water, or at least getting into the water, you'll often have staircases to get in and out. Along with that, you'll have sunken platforms that are put there on purpose at key depths so that you can, at the beginning, you can start getting kitted up before the dive without stirring up all the sediment or dropping and losing equipment. After the dive, you can actually take stuff off and put it down before you get out of the water. You can take your fins off, you can take your tank off, your weight belt, all that kind of stuff, and lay it down on this platform and then come back for it. You can go backwards and forwards, carrying all your stuff in and out of the water. So if you've got a bad back and you don't like carrying your twin set, just carry it down into the water and put it on in the water. It's much more civilized. Doing that on a normal shore dive, and really you're going to be losing equipment because it just drifts off and you walk away, you come back and oh, where did I leave it? So lakes are worth considering. Sure, the ocean has plenty to see, but so do a lot of lakes. Granted, you're probably not going to go back again and again to the very same dive lake, especially if it's just a natural lake with nothing to see but dirt and algae and the occasional fish, but diving lakes definitely have their place on your list of dive sites. Even if it's just for a check dive at the beginning of the season to check your gear. Again, I'd rather find a leak in my dry suit 20 meters from a heated changing room with its own shower and a dive center than on a boat 20 miles out on the North Sea. There are better places than there. Anyway, let us know your favorite diving lake in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.